Hey.
Welcome to Garden of the Spirit, a class studying apples from the orchard for the second time beginning after Pesach 2014. This class meets in Long Meadow, Massachusetts, the center of the universe, and is held in memory of Malka Ruth Bas Moshe, Margaret Vogel of blessed memory. Apples from the Orchard contain selections of teachings of Kabbalah from the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, based on the weekly Torah portion, verbally translated and explained by Rabbi Moshe Wisniewski. All right, so we are now on page 408, the last paragraph. We talked about the four types of damage in the Torah that are explained in the Gemara called Bava Kama. One of the Gemaras that are studied in the yeshiva systems that get very complicated.
Bavas.
Yeah, Bava. Bava means a gate. So it means Bava means a gate. So these are gates, possibly an entryway into the law. Instead of saying the law, say it's a case. And the first one was an ox that gores, or an ox, in other words, an ox that gores out of anger. This is called the horn. The second one is someone leaving an obstacle on the road, and someone else hits it and gets hurt. Or their animal falls in, most notably, a hole in the ground or a pit. Third one is not clear. It can either be, some understand it to mean a person who causes damage, or an animal that causes damage by pleasure, where, let's say, an animal, where the first type was an animal that acts out of anger. This one, the animal acts out of pleasure. It eats, it goes and it eats produce from someone else's field, or it takes produce off of a cart in the market, in the souk. And the fourth is where someone lights a fire and doesn't keep it under control and lets it go out of control, and that the fire then burns something. And we connected each of these with with our forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and with King David, and also with the spheres. Okay, now let me get. Okay, we are now up to 14. Move this to the bottom. Today is November 22nd. Okay.
That's today.
All day. All right. The pasuk in Tehillim states, "Mi Yimalel Gvuras Hashem." Who can articulate the powers or Gvura of Hashem? This is because, and we take it literally, not rhetorically, but literally, that basically it's impossible to articulate Gevura of Hashem. The Gevura of Hashem is too strong and is connected to damage by an ox. The damage is found in Gevura, Hod, and Malchus. Gevura and Hod are on the left vector of the Sephardic tree. I learned a new word, vector. Even though it's in the center, Malchus is dominated by Gevura. We have had that as well. What we said last time was that 10 Hashem created one opposite the other, which can mean that there are counterparts of klipa to holiness. So when we're talking about here, Gevura, Hod, Malchus, we are talking about counterparts in klipa to and not in holiness. Okay. Alan, page 408 at the bottom, please begin.
The ox, as we said, alludes to Gevura, and the attribute of Gevura is very strong, as it is written, "Who can articulate the powers of Hashem?" These powers are channeled through the three spheres of Gevura, Hod, and Malchus. Accordingly, the general principle of the ox subdivides into three sub-principles: the horn, the tooth, and the foot. The initials of the words for these three spell the word for lie, sheker, for they are, after all, forms of evil. Hod is situated directly under Gevura on the Sephirotic tree, indicating that it is a lower manifestation of Gevura. Malchus is the channel for all the spheres, but it has a special affinity for Gevura since, as we have explained previously, Malchus is constructed out of the aspects of Gevura of the other spheres. The totality of the evil of the ox is falsehood.
Okay, one moment.
We now
15, 1 moment. There are three damages of an ox. Horn, which is damage caused by an ox out of anger. Tooth, damage caused by an ox out of pleasure. And leg, damage caused by an ox unintentionally while it is walking. These are three categories. So any damage done by an ox out of anger doesn't have to be necessarily goring with its horn. It falls under the category of horn. Any damage caused by an ox out of pleasure is called tooth, even though it might not be eating. It might be scratching its back against a post. And any damage caused, but then the next one, leg, is any damage caused by an ox unintentionally while it's walking, or anything like that. For example, if it's what's the word? If it's swishing its tail here and there, what?
Swaying.
Swaying its tail, flaying its tail. I don't know what the word is.
swaying.
Huh?
Swaying.
Swaying its tail, then that would fall into this category of leg. It's just something that's just doing its own business that happens. In Hebrew, these are called keren for horn, shein, tooth, and regel, leg, whose initials spell sheker, which is falsehood. That's what we just read. Now, the Arizal will now connect the three types of damage in number 15, horn, tooth, and leg, to the three spheres of number 14, Gevura, Hod, and Malchus. At Mount Sinai, the shofar is called Yovel, the same word as the year of Jubilee. The shofar is a horn, keren, the name of the type of damage of horn. The year of Jubilee. So now we're like connecting a whole bunch of dots here. The year of Jubilee is the 50th year after 7 cycles of Shemitah. And Shemitah itself is a cycle of 7 years. Thus, the year of Jubilee corresponds to Malchus, the number 7, as does damage by the horn. So of the three things, Gevura, Hod, and Malchus, damage of the horn corresponds to Malchus. Okay, Alan, go ahead. Page 409.
We now proceed to analyze the three derivatives of the ox. The horn corresponds to Malchus, as we see in the blowing of the horn in the Jubilee year. The Jubilee comes at the end of 7 periods of 7 years, and Malchus is the 7th of the Midos. Thus, the horn is common to both of them. Also, Malchus is expression and communication, and the horn is a musical instrument. The evil horn, however, is goring. Perhaps this includes speech used as a weapon.
That's a very interesting connection. Malchus is speech, and here we're talking about a horn. So maybe a horn is communication like speech is, and when we talk about damages by a horn, it would mean harmful speech. Okay, 17. Now in the Friday afternoon, before Mincha, we have a paragraph in our Siddur called Pasach Eliyahu. Eliyahu opened his discourse. And over there he talks about the spheros that connect, correspond to different parts of the body. And in there we mentioned that Netzach and Hod, the spheros of Netzach and Hod, correspond to the 2 thighs. Therefore, damage by leg corresponds to Hod. We said Hod is on the left side. Okay, Alan, go ahead. Hold on. Yes, go ahead, Alan.
The foot corresponds to Hod, which corresponds to the thighs, the 2 supports of the body. The 2 legs correspond to Netzach and Hod.
Okay, 18. Damage by the tooth, that leaves one left, tooth and Gvura. Damage caused by the tooth corresponds to Gvura. As we said, and this was last week's class, there are 32 teeth. That's in humans. So 32 corresponds to the number of teeth. Hashem's name Elokim, the name of Gvura, is mentioned 32 times in the account of creation. That's from beginning of chapter 1 of Bereshis until the 3rd pasuk of chapter 2, which we read in the Kiddush. So the name of Elokim is there 32 times, while the name Havaya is not even mentioned until afterward. So the number 32, and Elokim we know is the name of Gvura, so therefore the number 32 corresponds to Gvura, which is the number of teeth. So teeth are Gevura. Go ahead, Alan.
The tooth corresponds to Gevura itself. This being the mystery of the 32 times the name Elohim is mentioned in the account of creation. This is the principle of Gevura corresponding to the 32 teeth. Hashem is referred to exclusively by the name Elohim in the account of creation. And this name is mentioned exactly 32 times in the course of this section of the Torah. As we said above, the 32 teeth manifest the 32 pathways of wisdom, both the contraction that produces chachma and the grinding action of the teeth are acts of gevura, limitation, and severity. Thus, the tooth is gevura, the foot is hod, and the horn is malchus.
Okay, pause there. Now, we are familiar with, from the laws of Shabbos, with Rishus Harabim and Rishus Hayachid, the public domain and the private domain. Basically, we're not allowed to carry in the public domain. We are allowed to carry in the private domain. In the laws of damages that we're learning about, the public domain is what's significant about whether we're talking about where the damage occurs in the public domain or the private domain. If it's in your property, so then I am the owner of an animal. I'm responsible to make sure my animal does not go into your property. It's someone's private property. But in the public domain, my animal, let's say an ox, for example, has permission to walk in the public domain, just like you have permission to walk there. You have you're allowed to set up your wares. You're allowed to set up your cart, your kiosk, where you're selling fruit or vegetables or homemade soap, whatever it might be. And so here too, the animal also has permission to go there, and so therefore the liability of the owner is much lower in the public domain. That's the difference between private domain and public domain for Shabbos. That's the difference between private and public domain for damages. However, then comes Kabbalah or creation. When we talk about the private domain, we mean an area or not a physical area, but a theoretical, spiritual area where Hashem's existence is clear, and it's not being obstructed. When we speak in Kabbalah, and also it's called Rishus Hayachid, the property of that's private or property of an individual, and the Yachid is one of the terms we have for Hashem, Yechido Shel Olam, the only one of the world, of the universe. We have, and the end of the bracha Yishtabach, depending on Nusach. Kel Melech Gadol Mo Batish B'Chos Kel Ados Adon Avos Barei Klan Shamas Ribbon Kamasim Habocher B'Shirei Zimra Melech Yachid Chei HaOlamim. And I think Sfard and in Ari we say Melech Yachid. He is a king alone. In Ashkenaz they say Melech Kel Chei HaOlamim, the Almighty, the King, the Almighty. So Yachid is a reference to Hashem as well. If we say Rishus Harabim, so to speak, it's ownerless. Anyone can go there. People can do what they want. It's the public domain, and so Kabbalistically, that's the difference. Rishus Harabim would be a place where Klipa exists or even thrives, the public domain. Rishus Hayachid is a place where the godliness is apparent and is unquestioned. Okay, Jim, are you ready? 409, when an ox.
When an ox causes damage with its tooth or foot in the public domain, its owner is not held responsible since it's expected to graze and walk around. People should therefore be careful about leaving their things in the public domain. If, however, the ox roams into someone's premises other than the owner's and causes damage, its owner is liable for the full value of the damage done. In contrast, if the ox causes damage in a public or private domain by its horn, by goring, or with its horn by goring, its owner is liable for half of the value of the damage done, since we do not expect an ox to gore unprovoked. The owner cannot be held fully responsible no matter where it causes damage.
And also the owner is not, it's out of the ordinary for the ox to get angry and start goring. So the owner, yes, he needs to make sure his animal doesn't wander into a private domain to eat. The ox isn't gonna, won't be able to read the sign that says keep out. But for goring, it's probably unlikely and highly unlikely that the animal's going to get angry and start going berserk, and therefore we don't hold the owner so responsible. He's only responsible for half. I don't know if you ever see on YouTube, they have videos of an elephant in India getting angry, knocking over cars. The cars in India have 3 wheels, and it's a motorcycle with a big box behind it.
Called putt-putts.
What?
They're called putt-putts.
Putt-putts. And the elephant gets mad and starts kicking everything around. Okay, so now we're going to discuss these laws of public domain and private domain, and show how it is in Kabbalah. Basically, remember that the damages, when we speak about damages in the practical sense, Kabbalistic speaking, is talking about damage in the spheras, or it's talking about that klipa thrives when we speak about damage. And they use the word blemish. Okay, 410. Jim, go ahead.
The Arizal will now discuss the mystical implication of these laws. Now, these 3 lower evil categories sometimes cause a blemish in holiness. That is, in the holy spark of Malchus of Atsilis. This is a damage caused in the private domain. The world of Atsilis is the allegory for the private domain, since the consciousness of Atsilis is that creation has only one owner, God. The 3 lower worlds allegorically are the public domain, since the consciousness dominant in the worlds is that there is such a thing as independent existence.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that is really bad, where the klipa causes damage even in Atzilus, or in Malchus of Atzilus. That seems to be less likely. But what's more common is that they cause the blemish or damage in the levels lower than Atzilus, and places where klipa already has a foothold, and therefore, since klipa already has some kind of foothold there, that's considered the public domain. The godliness is not obvious and apparent. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
At other times, they cause a blemish in levels below it, that is, in the realm of impurity itself, which receives its life force through the other gods. This is damage caused in the public domain. Impurity is the self-awareness that exists in the lower worlds. The other gods are the angels and other channels through which divine energy flows into these worlds. It is the fact that they are not created and informed directly from God that leaves room for creature consciousness, that is self-awareness.
Creature consciousness. Okay, very nice. King David writes in the Tillim, Al ta'aleni b'chatzi yamai. Do not, remove me from the world in the middle of my days. Over here, we're going to say that the middle of my days refers to the middle of Malchus. We said that the damage that corresponds to Malchus is damaged by the horn. So the horn is not able to damage what's above Malchus. It can't even damage the entire Malchus, only half of Malchus. So when King David writes, do not, bring me up, remove me from the world. The middle of my days means help me protect that which the horn may be able to damage, and help me protect that. The lower half of Malchus where damage can be done. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, when the damage is caused by the horn, the evil opposite of Malchus, it cannot cause damage to Malchus completely or to anything below it, but rather can cause damage only to its lower half, that is, its netzach, its hod, yesod. This is the mystical meaning of King David's words, "Do not bring me up in the middle of my days." For the damage caused by the horn, which corresponds to Malchus, reaches only up to that level. King David was a manifestation of the Sephirah of Malchus.
Okay, where else do we find half? Is by Queen Esther. And she went to King Ahasuerus, and he said to her, "I'll give you up to half." He says, "What is it that you request? If you request from me up to half the kingdom, I'll give it to you."
Mhm.
And what's half the kingdom? Kingdom is Malchus.
Malchus.
So he said, "I can give you up to half the kingdom." Go ahead.
For the same reason, Ahasuerus asked Queen Esther, "What is your question? What is your desire? Up to half the kingdom?" Queen Esther was another manifestation of the sphere of Malchus. King Ahasuerus here signifies the evil of the horn. Half the kingdom means mystically half of Malchus.
Okay, and what he was telling her is that the top half of Malchus can be free of klipa, and that can, I guess, fall under control of holiness. Okay, go ahead.
For the evil of the horn, which corresponds to Malchus, reaches only that high. He meant to say, if you desire the attributes of Malchus, which in its entirety is called what, this being the meaning of the words, what is your question? Then up to half of Malchus, for that is the extent of evil's rule. As we have said, it shall be done, meaning evil shall be removed from the upper half of the Malchus.
Okay, and then, as we said on the chart at the bottom of 409, that damage caused by a horn, the owner of the animal only pays for half the damage, because he pays half the damage because the only half of Malchus can be damaged. Go ahead.
Therefore, damage by the horn obligates its owner to pay only half the value of the damage, corresponding to its dominion over half of Malchus.
Okay, thank you. Now, next, so we talked about the different types of damage, different types of categories of damage. Then we talked about if it's done on private property, or if it's in Reshus Harabim in the public domain. There's another very important rule. I mentioned that the owner isn't expected to make sure his animal, he is expected to make sure the animal doesn't go into someone else's field and eat, or cause damage by trampling with its legs and feet. But the animal is not expected to get angry and start jumping around and cause damage that way. Well, not the first time it happens. We don't expect the animal, and therefore we don't have all the owner liable if the animal does get angry. But then the animal gets angry a second time, and okay, the owner's still not liable. But then it happens a third time, and according to some opinions, a fourth time. And by now we tell the owner that that typically animals don't act this way, but now your animal is getting angry.
Now
So
we all eat steak.
What?
Now we all eat steak.
Okay. Oh, okay. And not really.
Not
I
yet.
was going to say sign up the animal for anger management. Now the owner is responsible to
Yeah.
what's it called, to watch the animal, make sure he doesn't get angry. And if he does, now the owner is responsible for full damages.
Right. Okay.
So the words for this, the words are for the animal that is only damaged, that has never damaged, or only once or twice, is called tam. Tam means, it can mean complete, sincere, wholesome. Maybe here it's a whole, or they say unblemished. And we find, and so it's used in different contexts. We find that one moment. A tam is the simple son at the Seder. He's tam, he's whole, he's sincere, he's not complex. Simple meaning only one part. We have Yaakov is called Ish Tam. He's called in the parsha of this week. He is sincere, he's straightforward. He acts on the outside the way he feels on the inside. Later, he is placed in a position where he has to overcome this pureness and simplicity and straightforwardness by pretending to be his brother Esav and going to his father and getting the blessing. So he has to reverse roles, but that's the opposite of who he is by nature. By nature is an Ish Tam, he is straightforward and a person of integrity. So that Tam is the same word that this animal who does not have a history of anger is called also Tam. We find the same word in the Shir Ashir and Song of Songs, Yonasi Tamasi, my dove, my simple or straightforward, pure, naive. Naive might be a good word for Tam in many ways. Okay, and that would be for in a good sense, and like for Yaakov, each time that he's in a sense naive, it's meant as a quality. He's not a
Not
type of
devious.
person. What?
He's not devious, not angry, not
The opposite of Lavan.
right.
Yes. And he's placed in that position where he has to take on Lavan. What's going to win? Who's going to win? The qualities of Tam, of honesty and straightforwardness, or the schemer and cheater of Lavan, greed. Okay? Jim, go ahead.
This, however, is true only when the blemish does not persist, but is repeated only twice or at most 3 times. These 3 times correspond to Netzach Hod Yesod of Malchus. This is why such an ox is called an unblemished Tam one, as in the verse, my dove, my unblemished one, who only when able to unite with and be adorned with these 3 Sifirot can be called unblemished. The verse depicts God calling his beloved Jewish people his unblemished one, even though they have sinned. He considers their sins not serious enough to compromise their inherent purity, just as a limited number of gorings does not disqualify an ox from being considered unblemished. Yaakov, her husband, is called an unblemished man. Thus, the male quality of being unblemished is in Tiferes, above Netzach Hod Yesod. When Tiferes, the unblemished man, unites with these 3, the word for truth, emes, is formed. This is the mystical meaning of the verse, give truth to Jacob. For Jacob is the unblemished man dwelling in these tents. Jacob signifies Tiferes, as we know, or here, Tiferes of Malchus. Tam, Tav Mem, Emet, Aleph Men Tav. The difference between these two words is thus in the letter Aleph, whose numerical value is 1, signifying the one Sephirah of Tiferet that unites with the lower 3 Netzach, Hod, Yesod, which in this context represents the female. Thus, the union of the unblemished male and female produces enduring truth. Very nice.
Okay. Okay, Tom. And then you have the Aleph, you have Emet, truth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then if the animal commits damage 3 or according to opinions, 1 3 times, 1 4 times, he leaves the category of Tom and joins the category of what's called Muad. Muad means that it's expected that it's going to happen. That's one word. And we have Moed is the word for holiday because it's a like an appointment. It's a time that's been fixed on the calendar, so it's set. Moed is probably also related to the word Va'ed, which is for eternity. So in any case, this Moed or Mu'ad, it's also related to the word for evidence, testimony. It's something that's fixed. This now animal is Mu'ad. It's been fixed on this animal that is expected to cause damage. And then the liability of the owner goes way up. Page 411, Jim. However,
when the blemish persists due to the sins of the generation and is repeated 4 times, the ox becomes classified as an aggressive one. And the blemish spreads to all the subsephiros of Malchus. The ox's owner has to pay full damages. Once the ox has proven itself to be aggressive by having gored 3 times, its owner must assume responsibility for its actions and pay full damages when it causes damage.
okay, and here the Klippa has taken over. The damage is very great, and we're gonna connect the words of Tom. I'm sorry, 1 minute. Yeah, of Tom, and it's been changed now, which the animal leaves the category of Tom, of unblemished or straightforward. An animal that's not expected to get angry. From Tom becomes Mavet. Mavet meaning death. The mem tougher there we have to add the letter Vav. And then the word Muad, which is meant to say that the animal is one that has established itself as an aggressive animal. So Mu'ad also begins with a mem and vav, 2 letters of mavet. Okay, go ahead. These evils
are situated in the realm of death. Therefore, the word for unblemished Tom is formed from 2 of the letters used to spell the word for death, mavet. And the word for aggressive, Mu'ad, also possesses 2 letters used to spell the word for death. Mavet, mem, vav, tav, tam, tav, mem, Mu'ad, mem, vav, ayin, daled. Death, the opposite of divine life, is synonymous with self-awareness and ego.
Okay, and do the next part.
But as long as the damage has not extended beyond these three, the Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus, it is called half of the kingdom.
Okay, like we said with Esther. So now we're going to take the word for the animal that established itself as an aggressive animal, mu'ad. The first two letters are mem and vav, and that's two letters of the word mavet, which is death. The next two letters are ad, ayin dalid. Ayin dalid is not uncommon. It is, it's a very common word, but we're going to pick on one phrase with the word ad, and this is in the brachas from Moshe to the Jewish people at the end of his life, on the last day of his life. One of the last things he did was to give this blessing. And over there it says, Ad ta'avat givot olam. I think this is the blessing to Yosef. I didn't look up. It says here Genesis.
Until the desires of the ancient hills.
Yes, this is the blessings will come for Yosef so much that it's until the desires of until the ages of the earth. I think that's what it said. Until the edges, basically until the edges of the earth, till the desires of the, what are they right? The ancient hills. Okay.
Mhm.
So there the word ad refers to good to really good things. And I guess that the damage reaches those, even that level. Okay, go ahead. It will be observed.
It will be observed when we combine mem and vav from the word for death with the word for until, ad, we have the word for aggressive, muad. For until alludes to Tiferet, as in the verse, until the desires of the ancient hills. When the blemish occurs a fourth time, evil reaches Tiferet of Nukva. Then the letters mem and vav combine with the letters ayin and dalet, which signify Tiferet, and the ox becomes muad. Tiferet here, although strictly referring to Tiferes of Malchus, that is Nukva of Tzilis, also refers to the parts of Zeranpin, as is the sub-Sephirot of Nukva are arranged on sub-parts of Fim. The word for until, ad, is seen to be related to the word for gathering, ba'ad, and therefore signifies Zeranpin, the parts of form by the gathering together of the six midot, six being the numerical value of the letter vav, that is added to ad to form ba'ad. The ancient hills signify Bina and Malchus, Ima and Nukva. Ima desires to impart its blessing on Zer Ampin, and Nukva desires to cohabit with it. Mystically, this verse reads, Tiferet ad is the desire of the ancient hills, Ima and Nukva.
Okay, and we said before that there are 5 degrees of that in Malchus there are 5 states of Gvura. We said specifically it's Gvura of Chesed, Gvura of Tiferes, Gvura of Netzach, and Gvura of Hod. These are the 5 parts of Gevura or Din, judgment within Malchus. And guess what? We actually find in the Gemara 5 types of the angry animal.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned before the one that's mentioned in the Torah is the the category heading. The heading of the category is damage with the horn. But there are actually Gemara breaks it down into 5 distinct damages that animal does out of anger. Go ahead, Jim.
There are 5 aspects of the horn, 2 aspects being the main category, 3 being derivatives. The 2 aspects of the main category are goring and pushing. 3 derivatives are biting, laying down, and kicking. These 5 correspond to the 5 states of Gevurah in Malchus.
Okay. In the Hebrew, they only write
Oof.
Negicha is goring, Negifa pushing, Be'ita is kicking, is kicking. So they don't have, they're missing biting and laying down in the Hebrew, even though it's all bold. Okay, it's about 8, a little few minutes after. Should we stop here or do the next page? You got a page on a little bit?
Oh, we've got, yeah, only a page a little bit, yeah.
I'd rather, yeah, it's a whole page. I'd rather pause here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd rather pause it.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Alan, mark the
Chaim.
place.
Thank you,
Mark the
Chaim.
place, yes.
Have a
Close.
wonderful Thanksgiving, everybody. Enjoy the
Thanksgiving.
holiday.
Thank you.
Thank
Time
you.
off.
Okay?
Do they
Yep.
In the morning.
can
And a
they,
happy Rosh Chodesh.
can they make schnitzel out of turkey?
What?
Sure.
Can they
Sure,
make
you can make.
out of turkey?
Why not? Turkey schnitzels. Of course you can.
Wow, a new product line.
Well, I mean, if you got turkey, you got